Laine guessed she did not need the amber beads anymore. They were more a symbol of the strength she'd always had. She was the shapeshifter. Father Ravalli had not turned her into a sheep. In fact, that was only her imaginings. They looked like orange seeds that had fallen into the grass, or pomegranate seeds Persephone had gone through the darkness for. They were her tiny pinpricks of enamored pain turned to courage. They came out from the fire better than before. It was like a broken bracelet that had been snapped from its cord. She dove down on her hands and knees, picking them out of the grass, as if to pick them up, changing her mind, retrieving them from the burial mound. If only she could. She felt regret for giving away something so important. What did they represent? Going back to the motherland? The place of her ancestors? Ireland? Maybe it was Ireland. She leaned against the brown bull who lay in his original spot, and she closed her eyes. When she felt something was moving behind her. It was something in the tree. She thought it was a bug at first, and snapped her hand back to try to reach it. When she moved to Boston, she'd sometimes do her writing outside under the trees. There were so few of them compared to in Montana. Her coworker said, "What are you, Pocahontas?" Laine asked, blinking. It was as if Myrtis had turned into a grandmother or weeping willow. Laine looked around for her red caravan, before realizing the poppies were like the broken shards of her red caravan, reflected off the pieces of a smashed bottle. She would have screamed if it didn't seem that. She looked so kind and grandmotherly. "Myrtis, what are you doing here?" Laine asked. "Here," she said, "take this." "What is it?" Laine asked. "Your inheritance," Myrtis said. And Laine remembered how Jerry had said the same thing. "Your true inheritance, it can't be lost and no one can take it away from you," Myrtis said, handing her a sachet. Laine looked inside the sachet, where the amber beads glistened like fish bait in an old tackle box. The beads were now separated and held inside what looked like a little sack that you put lavender in. That was the thing about true inheritance. It was a birthright. It was not something anyone could take. She put the beads back inside and attached the sack to her girdle chain. Myrtis gently grasped the brown bull's rope. Laine stood up and faced the landscape that descended down to Lake Albano, where the coppice formed down below. She sat on her knees and placed her hand lightly on the cow's neck, where it still dozed in the same position, and did not open its eyes at her touch. She heard the faint sound of voices, and Romulus's followers were chanting Roma, getting ready to start their new adventure, and she was starting hers. "It's okay to look back with acceptance and see how far you've come," Myrtis said. "Just don't look back too long. Otherwise you'll end up repeating the same steps of your journey." It was true. In writing her dreams into reality, she had had to change into a different person than she started, which felt like a lonely and isolating process. You've been gifted the ability to transform yourself through your work. Now other people are inspired to transform themselves, Myrtis said. But you're not done yet. Laine felt centered, grounded, and uncomfortable. She was entering a new land which was wet and rainy and full of possibilities, if not yet good luck. And she looked at Myrtis. When we evaluate transitioning from one state to another, we can see that it is not simple. It will take time. You mean this part of the journey really is over? Laine said, feeling like the wind was knocked out of her. The anxious, empty feeling of being suspended midair. If only it were so easy to cast off her past, like a ton of bricks. The other parts were good memories. She'd faced moments of desperate confusion in her sheep state, but it had always connected her to Romulus, her higher self. If her journey with Romulus was truly at an end, why had she spent so much time in the foretell of her life? She guessed it was for the integration that went on deep inside her. Those lessons had grown in her, just like the way the she existed in the Irish myths, and heroes worked their way from the underworld and back. But often the underworld were the darker parts of themselves. In the same way, the curse of the Ulsterman was the foretell to the cattle raid of Cooley. She'd learned in her pre-Norman Irish lit class back in college. Entering into this part of her journey, where all the pieces would connect. No matter what happened in anyone's past, a person always had the chance to manifest a new reality. They only had to be willing to sit uncomfortably through their pain until it passed. I am just not sure what I'm supposed to do next, Laine said. Well, it's up to you, Maureen said. You have so much beautiful chaos to work with, my dear. I've always loved Ireland, Laine said, remembering fondly the time she went there after she finished her undergrad. What are these for? Laine asked, holding the amber beads that seemed to be meant to stick by her. What's happening? She stood up and caught herself on the tree's bark because she felt dizzy, like standing up from a hot bath. A doorway or crack started to open inside the giant oak. You should adorn yourself more, Maureen said, calling after Laine. And Laine realized she couldn't be held back anymore from this new phase of her life. If she was an animal, she'd have ripped and teared. That's what Harlan used to always say. Like some animal. He was ripping and tearing. And she'd have snorted, too, down into her unknown darkness in the center of the tree of Maureen's, the sacred tree of life. It was a giant hazel, actually. The hazel the salmon of wisdom had eaten in the story of Finn McColl. She was shedding her leaves. It was a time of great changes, and her branches opened like the weary hands of a grandmother showing a child how to form a steeple. But as it was, Laine was a dirty, scroungy, homeless bum, sifting through the murk into her new life. Maureen called out, telling her to slow down, but she was in her now moment, burrowing frantically at the debris she knew would come away and take her down so very deep. She would try to mind, she really would, but was feverishly excited, like she'd just been born, and she hoped she deserved to feel this good. She smelt smoke and sage like someone had lit an incense stick. Eventually she started sliding down something. The debris was all gone. The whole time it felt like she was on a slide in the McDonald's playpen, leading to a chamber of balls. She was 7 years old, but also she felt safe, like she was in her bed in her apartment in Boston, watching a Reiki video before drifting to sleep. She didn't feel afraid. It was as if, when she opened her eyes, the pit of balls would turn into coins. Maybe these coins were her sudden inspirations, ideas clamping together and adding to something substantial. A friend from college told her once that time wasn't linear. Maybe he was right. Who's to say a memory wasn't also taking place in the present? Or visions of the future, which were just nudges, outlines, not also taking place too. For some reason, she was wearing a sailor's hat and a navy blue dress. Her parents took a picture of her in it. She was whiling out around the house in Billings that day. Her uncle was visiting from Seattle. At that age, she was the center of everything, captured leaning in the front of another family photo, with all her cousins behind, leaning sideways across everyone like a rose against a coffin. Her choker necklace and trimmed bangs, before the gawkiness of puberty set in. It was all through association, based on instinct, to know which lines to put together, which memories, based on feeling, just like her storyline followed no sequential order. Another time it was her second or third birthday, and Mom made a cake for her in the shape of a cat. They put sunglasses on her cheeks ruddy, and all her teeth coming in demon splotches of gum. Dad's hair was gray and black, his face tan. The bangs of Mom's frizzy blonde hair were straightened into a poof that covered her forehead. She had always been a beautiful lady, with blue eyes and round glasses. Laine wondered if it was this compound association mixed with her imagination that allowed her to transcend the more painful moments as she wrote about them.
Artlist.io.
I said hi, but I did not say goodbye. What do you want? That's my style. Don't be mad, I'll be sad. I get drunk so quick it's bad. I'm flattered you missed me, but thanks for the whiskey.
Music licensing reimagined.
Goodbyes. There's no taking time, no standing in line. We just head to the back and we fly. And when they realize it's late in the night, they're asking why did he leave? What do you want? That's my style. Why don't you stay for a while?
On the way down, she saw the old maps, only understood by dreamers of dreams, of the Corlia trackway, the royal seat of Tara, Emain Macha, the gates of Ulster, and what she thought was the heart of her ancestral land.